the Secretary of Defense and
Shoot, we could just give you the floor. I know you ain't talking. I'm just saying, but I don't have that kind of vitriol towards mine.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Black Men with Purpose podcast. For those of you that's joining us for the first time, it's a pleasure to have you with us. This is a safe space where we share our thoughts on a multitude of topics, hopes of helping Black males, young and not so young, to overcome obstacles and challenges that can be hindrances to happiness, productivity, and success. We believe through our experiences, successes, and failures, we can have some conversations that might help other Black males in their respective journeys and through this thing called life. And today, it has been quite a 2 weeks since the last time we talked to y'all. So, we figured we would just come here today and talk about it. We freestyling this week. We gonna talk about wherever the conversation takes us. And man, let me tell you something. Just today, at the time of the recording, we already got figuratively and literally bombs to drop. As one of our favorite, that's total sarcasm, DEI hires the Secretary of Defense and his faux pas that is all over the news today, releasing national war secrets over a chatting app called Signal. So that's what is one of the big headlines. There's probably so much more, so much going on. But since the last time we talked to y'all, the daylight savings time kicked in and it's so much brighter and so much lighter. And so we're going to be agents of the news, but we're also going to be agents of light. So with that intro, let me not even, delay it. Fellas, how y'all feeling? We're going to start with Dr. B. Talk to us, man. B, talk to us, man.
Man, you talk about the DEI hires, but on a serious note, man, these folks are just turning people's worlds upside down. In my role, I had to tell people that were en route, relocating to take jobs in other parts of the country that, hey, we sorry, but when you get there, that job is not going to be there for you. And we talk about veterans. We talk about people that have already paid their dues in the military and they're trying to, solidify employment moving forward, thinking, hey, let me continue serving my country in the federal government. And now they find themselves out of work. And so it's just crazy how at this point you have folks that are having to reinvent themselves. And that was the excuse they gave, was the secretary of the VA, was like, hey, you veterans, I know you spent 15, 18, 20 years in the military. I know you've spent 8-10 years working here at the VA. So here you are in your 50s. Just go reinvent yourself. Go out to the private sector and go reinvent yourself. But the problem is these crazy cuts, y'all impacting corporate America as well. And so, and more so in corporate, because those positions, when they get hit, they're like, we don't have no job for you, so you got to go. You know, at least in the government, they're trying to hide you, put you someplace else. But nah, they just like you out. And so it's a big adjustment for a lot of people. And you know, so, you know, for me, it's you know, I kind of wear my, you know, my job on my sleeve when you out there trying to help people, you know, secure a future for their family. And then all of a sudden their life got changed up. It's no fault of their own. And but yeah, that's just that. I just want to start with that I'm out here and I feel sorry for the folks that having to make the change. But some of y'all voted for this. So them folks, I don't care. I don't care nothing about them. I hate to say it, but I don't care nothing about them. Y'all,
It's a great time.
Tagline. Some of y'all voted for this, so roll with it.
I think it's a great time to look at Ray's shirt. As a matter of fact, it's on you next, man. What you got for us, Ray?
Well, appreciate you, bro. I'm gonna piggyback a little bit off of what Byron said. I know last time I said I was unbothered. This time I'm gonna say I feel, and I think I could say this. I know I could speak for all of us. This is prophetic. This was prophetic. We all saw this coming a year ago when they released Project 2025. We saw this mess coming. You know, so it was, like I said, it was more than predictable. The thing that I don't want to hear from anybody that voted for Trump, I don't ever want to hear them say, you know, again, that he loves the military and he loves the vets. I don't want to hear that mess anymore, because it's clear that he doesn't, and anybody that's working for him, there's no way that they care about the military. There's no way they care about the veterans. I'm sure you all have seen the video. There was a young lady, at least on TikTok, you know, she got on there and her husband was literally irate in the background, and he was supposed to go to the VA hospital or to see his therapist, and it was time for his medication to get renewed, and they get all the way to his appointment only to find out that the therapist had been let go, and it was time, and the therapist was the one that was going to refill his prescription for his medication. So this guy is literally in the background on this video screaming about how he doesn't want to hear anymore about how they love the vets and how much they care about it, because they truly don't. And it was unclear as to whether or not that guy voted for Trump or not. If he did vote for Trump, like Byron just said, I have a hard time feeling sorry for you, you know, but because again, they told us from the beginning that this was the way it was going to go, and yet you voted for him anyway. You were okay with voting for a 34-time convicted felon ahead of voting for a qualified Black woman, because that's you would rather have the unqualified white man that's a felon that should have been ineligible to run for president anyway. You are more comfortable with having him there, knowing that he told over 30,000 certified lies in his last administration, and all he did was golf, and he's been doing the same thing since he's been back in office. I mean, he's wasted over $24 million on golf trips. So how is that supposed to be fixing fraud, waste, and abuse? He's abusing the system himself, because and enough with this, he doesn't take a salary mess. He doesn't have to. He's getting paid. He's gotten paid over 286 times what from golfing this past 8 weeks alone than what 246 basically 246 years worth of presidential compensation. So you know, it's just ridiculous, man. So again, it was, if nothing else, this was prophetic. We all saw it coming, and anybody who didn't see it coming and voted for him, you know what? I got nothing for you. But I'm gonna stop yapping. I'm gonna let Brother Rod jump on in here and give us some wisdom.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot, man. Well, I will take a different spin at it because I'm still unbothered. And I think the reason I am is because I've long thought that, you know, we need to take more control over what happens to us, for us. You know, so for instance, you know, in the guy that you talked about, the VA, and, you know, so it's a shame that even though the therapist was let go, that there wasn't a process system in place that said, okay, hey, he has X number of patients scheduled already. We need to call them and cancel or reschedule them with another therapist. And so I say that to say that, you know, we know that, and we've been in and around the government forever, and it all points back to the processes, right? You know, we expect people to do their jobs until we realize that, oh, okay, they might be doing their jobs, but their processes are broke. And so you can't expect anything out of a broken process, you know. And so this thing about looking for efficiencies in the government, there's all kinds of efficiencies that can be gained in the government. You know, they might not be going about it in the way that we would. They might not even be looking at the right things, you know. I think the biggest thing, what I've, you know, seen and heard, I haven't watched a lot of news, but what I hear is that, you know, the uproar is the approach, because now you're forcing me into a place of uncomfortableness, I'll say, that I wasn't planning on. So now I've got to figure out some things, you know, on my own to take care of me and mine. And so that's kind of the slant that I wanted to take, and that, you know, I'm hoping that, you know, this is just a revelation and not something that, okay, it's all about one person or two people. They were terrible people. No, it's probably a bunch of people in this country that may or may not mean you any good. What are you doing to take care of yourself and prepare for that, so that you're not totally, you know, dependent on, you know, a system that you know is broken? And, you know, and so I would hope that, if nothing else, that people start thinking about it from that perspective. You know, we have to do more, you know, to take care of the things that we value, because other people might not value that same thing. You know, like, okay, they're taking books out of the schools about history. How many parents then take it upon themselves to teach their kids about their history? You know, so I just think that there are, you know, a lot of things that that hopefully we're paying attention to, and that we're taking the approach that, okay, I see now what's really going on. Let me make sure that those that I care for, those that I love and support and want to see do well, make sure that they're better prepared. You know, how many parents pouring into their kids on a daily basis? You know, how many folks are making sure that their kids have, you know, 529 accounts, you know, so that they can have choices when they get to be, you know, a young adult graduating from high school and getting ready to decide what they do next. You know, I still say, and I read something the other day where we had 34 million Black Americans in the U.S. and we're still the largest consumer on earth. You know, so we're spending our money on things, you know, and I think that we need to just think about it differently and start looking in the mirror and examining what we value. And then let your life that you build look like what you value, you know, because you can talk about whomever and, you know, the terrible systems in place, and, you know, people are going to keep voting for, you know, who they like for whatever reason, you know, without really understanding, you know, the second, third, fourth order of effect of that particular vote. Or they vote and then walk away and never look at the voting record of the people they voted for. So I'll get off that soapbox. I just say that, you know, I looked at Project 2025, so I'm not that surprised. I think that, you know, the biggest thing is the approach people weren't expecting. And so it's taken a lot of people off guard in that respect. But for me, I've just been, you know, trying to double down on, you know, what I need to do to increase, you know, my relationship with God that I serve, and really look at it from that perspective, because things are going to always go on around us, you know, and I don't want to be moved by things and by people that might not mean me any good. You know, I'd rather spend my time on, you know, the things that I really can control, and, you know, and make sure that it matches what I value and the standards I set for my own life. So that's all I have to say opening up, brothers. I will turn it over to Brother John.
Hey, John, before you hop in here, Rod, you made a comment about, you know, us teaching our own kids. And I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you. But my fear is that, you know, what we are going to be teaching our kids, what mom and dad is going to be teaching our kids, is not going to match up with what these teachers are going to be teaching our kids. And the unfortunate thing is, what the teachers are teaching is going to be what the kids are going to be tested on. So to me, that's going to provide a huge conflict in the kid's mind. And I don't know how we could overcome that, you know, because again, it's not like we're going to be teaching our kids something false, but it's going to be something completely different than what the educational system wants taught to our kids and what they're going to be testing our kids on.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. You know what? But I submit to you that that's always been the case, right? And
True.
it always goes back to, you know, I don't know about y'all, but I don't know any teacher that had more influence over my kids than I did.
True.
Right. So it's not that, you know, we're going to teach our kids something that's not going to show up on a test somewhere. I don't even care about that. We're trying to teach our kids so that they can survive in this world in case we're not here to provide them, you know, the safety, security, you know, and the soft landing that they may need one day. They can still, you know, maneuver and make good decisions. And then as far as, you know, what's going to be on the test, well, you know, that's part of the education, though. You're going to learn things in school that may be part of the test. However, these are the things that I believe that you need to know and understand about history, about your history, about the history of this country, right? You know, and it's not so that you can, you know, challenge the teachers at school necessarily. It's so that you can challenge any norms when you know facts, you know, to the contrary. So no, that's a great point. And I just think that, it shouldn't take away from, what we value and what we believe our kids need to know and understand. We teach that anyway. And I would tell you the biggest thing is, how money works and how they obtain, financial security on their own, because I will tell you at some point, we've got to start winning in an economic sphere, right? When it's predicted that by 2053, the net worth for Black Americans will be zero. I mean, people can think that's a long ways off. That's 28 years from now.
Mhm.
So for all the progress that we believe we made or have made, what are we doing to sustain that and pass it down from generation to generation? And if you know better, you should do better, right? So whether you were taught it or not, and I think that's where I know I found myself in that space where, okay, and I'm just, making a list now for my kids. You need to know and understand these things, these principles, and you need to govern yourself accordingly, so that you don't become a statistic in the future, and then you can pass it on to your kids. So that's what I'm hoping it will do, as the chaos goes on around us, man, because, you can't, people are locked in, and foundationally, I think people are just selfish. They want, that's why you don't hear a lot of Congress people speaking out. Where the marches at, right? Everybody just kind of, and I don't know if you all heard, but I know there was an uproar about Senator Schumer deciding to vote to keep the government open.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, I think he went on the talk and they asked him about it. And he spoke about why he made that decision, and I think instead of being caught up in the emotion of it all, really understanding what would have been the implication if he had talked people into voting to shut the government down. Mm-hmm. And I think his explanation, while people still might not agree with it, it made sense if you think about the people that would be impacted, the less fortunate, and those that really need the services that, now they'll still get with the government remaining open. Whereas if it was shut down, now you're leaving it up to, the executive branch to determine, how money gets allocated. So I was glad to see that. And I hope that people are really paying attention to those types of things and kind of really separating the emotion of it all. Because I know a lot of people are appalled, what they're seeing and hearing. But, we still have to make sound decisions, no matter how we feel. Right. And unfortunately, and it's my last point, but I think a lot of people, I don't know about you all, but I know that, men I've seen in my life and what I witnessed was that, I saw a lot of men walk away from families that they had built because of how they felt. Right? As opposed to being committed to the commitment they made, they walked away because of how they felt. You're not making me happy anymore. I'm out. And so, and that's not to pass judgment and all, because people, make decisions, for whatever reasons. And, and I've done it. So I'm not here to, cast any aspersions on anyone. I'm just here to say that, once I, learned, took a step back and looked at it, and realize, the impact that it really can have. I think if you look at anything that ails our community, it points back to, the dissolution of the Black family. And I just, hope that at some point, we as men and as leaders within our families recognize that we really do have to set the example. And sometimes it has to be in spite of what we might be feeling. And with that, I'll pass it over to Brother John.
Yeah, I don't think with Chuck Schumer, I don't think so much it was of the feeling. It was the lack of the Democrats at this point showing any type of unity. When you go back to the State of the Union, when you had 10 Democrats stand up to censure Al Green, and then you had 10 who decided to sign with the budget. It just showed there's a lack of no unity at this moment. And, when you don't have unity, because really, when you don't have unity, you really don't have anything. I mean, when you look at the GOP, they are in uniform with the lie. they will be in uniform with the lie. They will lie. And some wait to this this bomb that comes out that John talked about at the top about how the information got out. They're gonna lie about that too. And so it's just like at some point, not that you have to lie, but when are we going to show the unity and saying, you know what, enough is enough? Because again, there's no unity, even with the Democrat Party right now. You got Bernie Sanders, even though he and AOC are out doing a great thing, trying to get people, unified. You still got some people it's like, I'm not going to do nothing because of the district that I'm in. I'm so afraid of losing my seat. I'm not going to say nothing, So at some point, folks have got to say, I'm in this seat because I was elected, but when am I going to start doing the right thing? And when am I going to start showing unity for the people that elected me, not so much for my seat? Because guess what? Just like the VA director said, you can go reinvent yourself. If you're a senator or congressman, you set for life. You only got to do one term. You got insurance for life. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get a retirement for life. So at some point, when are you going to start out here and do what you are elected to do? And when you see something ain't right, call it out. But instead, you're going to turn your head and be like, well, I'm more concerned about my seat than I am the will of the people. And so,
yeah, facts. And all that does is prove that the two-party system might not be what's best. That's what that
George Washington said that.
So I'm just saying. So again, but it's incumbent upon individuals to stand up, and let their voice be heard, whether it's through their vote, whether it's through their activity, because you're right. We need to get away from this, you can get elected as many times as someone's willing to vote for you. So where's the talk on term limits?
Right.
Yep.
So that people don't go in thinking, okay, once I get elected, as long as I go along and get along,
I'm good.
And do something every now and again for the folks in my district, then, I could be here 40 years. That's not what those jobs were for, that and no one should have a job for life. That should be un-American. Supreme Court included.
Facts.
So anyway, Brother John, over to you for real this time.
Nah, it's not like that. We have to talk. Anybody can talk about, and that's kind of what I really, really like about this collective. We're here for a singular purpose, Black men with purpose. And when we talked about it, having conversations that could positively impact Black men young and not so young. And even as we've talked about it, conversations that could impact anyone, we really want to focus on our community, the Black community, but having sensible conversations. And, as I look across my brothers, I see another thing. When you look on the political spectrum, we all fall slightly different areas. I would definitely say Rod, I'm not saying he's right wing, but out of the four of us, would be more towards the conservative end. I think Ray has moments of anger where he wants to put that out there, but I think he's more in the middle. And then I think me and Dr. B, I think I'm the most resistant minded. I'm 100% for the resistance. But that's not prohibitive to us being effective. I think that is a benefit, that we can see things from different perspectives and can come up with different ways. And so, we don't want to ever give the idea that this is a show where we come and we argue with each other. We're all passionate about, justice, and we're passionate about mentoring and things going. And so, just to get into how I feel, because the political discourse was so good, man. I really wanted to get in and give my opinions on some stuff, but I'm just like, I'll never get to my point. But I will say, I appreciate what you said about Schumer, but he's a sucker. You know what I'm saying? Because that's framing that he used to say he wouldn't vote to shut the government down. What they were trying to say, if you listen to voices that oppose this, and not just ALC, but somebody who I deeply respect, who I pull for, and I feel like her name should be first, is Jasmine Crockett. And her points is that legally, all of the things that he said would happen from a shutdown government could be debunked by procedure. And so she had her own ways of debunking the things that he said, but of reframing that she did is like, it wasn't a vote to shut down the government. It was a vote to say, y'all pushed this through without any of our help. You didn't ask for our input. You weren't willing to come to the table and negotiate with us. And we're supposed to go along with this, that although you can make the claim that so many people will be hurt, but what was in the bill is going to hurt people for generations to come when they're cutting Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and things that we paid into. That bill authorizes them and gives them power of the pen and power of the purse to cut all of these things that are important to working class and, underserved people, so that they could push through a tax cut for the top less than 1%. And so while I hear where you're coming from with Schumer saying I want to do a responsible thing and not shut down the government, there was another responsibility to say, I have power to fight against something that I think is bad for the people that I serve. And I'm not voting to shut down the government, but I'm voting to make them come to the table and at least have a conversation and not try to say, we're going to come up with this bill that's bad for the people. And then if they don't accept it, they're shutting down the government. That's clever positioning of what they said. But, sometimes you got to figure out what you're not going to stand for. And I think some people said, we're not going to stand for what they're doing in this particular bill. And there were some people that just said, it's too uncomfortable for me to be positioned or talked about as if I'm responsible for shutting down the government. And I, like all of you, I think shutting down the government is terrible. We've been through far too many shutting downs of the government in the last, few years over this fact that the politicians here's the thing that's madness to me. The politicians that are supposed to serve the constituents, I get that you have a political leaning, but that doesn't mean that you go in and you don't serve all of the people that live in the area from which you came from just because you lean one way or the other. And I think it's crazy. And I think it's just because I was a leader in the military and it never was a thought to me that I'm not going to serve the people that fall under my leadership because they believe something different than me. Like, that never occurred to me. as a leader to not serve somebody because they don't have the same ideologies and beliefs that I do. As long as we understand that we are both on the same team when it comes to what we raised our right hand to do. And to look at a lot of these politicians on both sides of the aisle where it's just about them and their power grab. And here's the other thing that is really, Chuck Schumer and Pelosi, they are some of the worst offenders. Hakeem Jeffries too. How much money is put into their pockets for the stances that they make? And so Chuck Schumer was going to come out here to DC to do a book signing tour shortly after this, but we shut that down. Like, he recognized that we was going to show up and make it a problem for him here in DC if he wanted to get them books signed. So he was like, you know what? I've decided that we're not going to do the book signing tour. The audacity, you know what I mean? For you to fold and then think you could come here and push your book out and make more money. Like, nah, bro, it's time for you to go sit down somewhere. But when I think about what's going on, I can't help but think about the fact that I would love to, it's important to me to say to people that are being negatively impacted by this, that my heart goes out, because these are things that generations before, you know, we've organized, we've protested, we've done all of these things to get us to a point, and to be here in 2025 and to see things that were fought so hard for to be being repealed. And you know, I agree with Rod on, you know, we got to focus on ourselves and focus on things like that. But at the same time, we've got to have a heart of compassion to know how much this hurts. To think about when I was in college in the mid 90s, and David Duke came to our school, and the Ku Klux Klan had death threats against me and one of my buddies because we were the president and vice president of the NAACP, and that we had to rally and fight against these things. And, you know, when organizations and businesses want to make fun of the Million Man March, you know, we had to go do sit-ins and let them know, hey, man, we're not here to play with y'all like that. Like, as students, you know, and I think one of the great things at that time was we didn't realize how much danger we were in, and we didn't have as much to lose. So we had a lot more courage. You get to my age, and sometimes you're not as willing to do that. But I'm proud of the things that we did. And we actually put on a rally with all of the local NAACPs in the area of Texas State. It was SWT back then. We put together an organization called the Coalition of African Americans United for Self-Empowerment, CAUSE. And we had some of historic civil rights figures come, and we made a stand, and we talked about how we weren't going to stand for how the school and the surrounding citizenry and the neighborhood to continue to treat Black people like second-class citizens, man. And there were thousands of people at this rally. And, you know, I just think about all the things that we did. And, you know, I'm going online to look for some of the stuff we did, some of the articles we wrote. Man, we wrote some cold articles, man. I remember the editor-in-chief got mad. He's like, you'll never write nothing like this in the paper again unless it's fatted out. I was like, man, whatever. I didn't need your permission to talk about how photographers don't come to Black events. They just want to. I think I closed it with a line. I said, maybe we might be able to catch one of those photographers from the University Star if there's a white dude out there playing Frisbee with his dog out in the park. It's like, it was cold, man. I went at their neck. And, you know, to think that we've gone through all of that. And so I'm kind of going online and looking, I'm be like, you know, is there any, you know, memories of this? Or is this anywhere I can find online? And then to find out, when I looked at protests, and to find out that our babies, it was 2020, and they were still having to go and fight 25 years later, fighting against the administration and the school and the school government, talking about, I don't know what else they want, man. The Blacks have it good. I'm like, my man, the Blacks? Really? That's what we're doing? And to realize that, it breaks my heart, because none of us ever deserve this. And as men who have lived through so much of this, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like a starting point for us. You know, like I've been to places where they said we don't serve your kind here. I've been beat up by cops that said, you know, like all the time, a rough ride. I done talked about rough rides all the time, man. I've been put in jail and for no reason, but I was black and existing while the cops were doing it. I didn't have them run up into my house and all of that. I haven't had friends that's been, one of my friends, man, bullets came so close to his grandmother and they shooting at the wrong house, but they the cops, so they can get away with it. And then it's just, well, whatever, it happens. And, you know, they could have killed his grandmother, you know, and they had to fix bullet holes in the house and they didn't care. Like I've lived through this, being called racial slurs and being told you're smart for somebody of your skin tone. Like, yeah, I've lived through that. So like, it hit me different because I'm of the mind that this is what it is. But when our babies are going through this, like, that's not fair. That's not fair. And there's no part of me that says, well, you know, it is what it is. There's always something in me that's like, man, we got to fight this. I'm not going to see it in my lifetime go away. But there's never nothing in my heart that says, yo, we ain't got to fight this. We ain't got to fight racism. We ain't got to fight misogyny and, you know, classism and sexism and homophobia, all of these things, man. It's just like, there's not a part of me to say, because it's not fair. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes when we're having these conversations, we don't have that baseline right there that, yes, we've overcome it. And yes, there's so much we can do. But that baseline needs to be, it ain't fair. And so at that point, you got to decide, are you fighting oppression or are you fighting for who's the most respectable? Because if it's oppression, then I don't care who the victim of it is. The oppression is wrong. I don't care if it's Ray and Earl and y'all don't like how they living. It still ain't fair that they get oppressed because, you know, Brent and, you know, Skylar, they out there living wild and crazy too. And yet they mess up and they get opportunities and they can go be president. You know what I'm saying? But then our babies, you know, I got so many people that I grew up with that meant something to me. And, you know, we talk about handling our own, but I got a buddy, man. We went to college together, man. We were talking about doing our financial aid and we were at a nightclub, man. And he was like, I got my financial aid package, man. I'm gonna fill that back up. I'm gonna be back in school with y'all. 2 days later, man, he got shot. Like not somebody that knew him. He was minding his own business. And just because of where we from, he got shot and killed. He never got the opportunity, you know? And so when it comes to that, I always think about, I'm privileged to be here because I know people that were minding their own business and the oppression of this society took them away and they didn't have the opportunity and it ain't fair. And so I always think about that. And I always want to frame that more so as like, so much we can do better. And so let's do it better. And I'm definitely for that. But I also recognize it's not fair and that this system, man, destroys people. And I can't get caught up in the idea that just because I made it out, that that's how it's supposed to be. D.L. Hewley, man, he was on a podcast, man. He made a great point. He was talking about we are sold this idea that it's supposed to take all of this to make it out. You know, like you can't just be in the military. You got to be like above and beyond. But yet, all of us know we had peers that didn't deserve to be peers with us. Didn't do half that we did to get where we got. And they got promotions and went on, you know what I'm saying? They went on and all this, that, and the other. Couldn't hold, you know, they couldn't put their finger on us for what we had accomplished, but they got more opportunities. And the idea that we got to do so much just, man, Chris Rock made a great joke. Was it Chris Rock? It was some comedian. I think it was Chris Rock. But he was talking about, he was like, yo, I'm a world-renowned comedian. He said, my neighbor is a dentist. Not a dentist on TV, but like a dentist at the mall, and he's my neighbor. You know what I'm saying? And it's like all he got to do is just go to school and be a dentist. I got to rule the world, be one of the best to ever do it, and we neighbors. You know, so man, I took too much time. Man. Why ain't y'all stop me? But
You was on a roll, boy. You was on a roll. Yeah, you was on a roll. You know, but I like what you were saying because our counterparts, and I'm talking people that don't look like us, they don't believe that our experiences are real. And not that they have to believe that, but in the sense when we do try to explain to them what we go, oh no, you're just exaggerating, you're making that up. But all of us have, John, the stories, all of us got stories where we had run-ins with the law when we just mind our own business, or you know, we're treated differently because of who we are and what we can accomplish. And it's not that we want somebody to pity us, because like what Rod says, you know, we still had to go and be better. We still had to go and learn and figure out what do we do to pass it on to the next generation. I think for us, it's always going to be like that. I think it should be, like you said, it's not fair, but we just got to accept the fact this is how we're going to survive. This is how we're going to survive. This is how we got to pass it on to the next year. We got to find new ideas. Like my daughter, they don't believe like in a regular 9-to-5 job. They're like, let me be creative in what I do and let me do something different, but they still making money. I'm like, hey, as long as you don't call, ask me for money, we good. You know what I'm saying? So as long as they're doing things, you know, Ray's bonus daughter, perfect example. Let's do something different. And so my thing is, going back to what Robert said, let's teach our children you can do better and you don't have to follow the same mold. And you can be who you want to be. You just can't let nobody tear you down. But at the same time, we're in this system that will be that will try, boy, they'll test you. They will test you. So I'm done. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, the good thing is nowadays, you know, we do have some examples. Like you said, my bonus daughter, she was working for Raytheon and decided she was going to strike out on it and do her own thing. And she has become extremely successful at it. My biological daughter decided, you know, I don't want to work a standard 9-to-5. I want to own my own business. And she started her own business and she's doing well for herself, you know. So again, what we did not have coming up, any of us, we didn't have an example of like a black man in the White House. Only thing we ever saw was white men going into the White House, and then here it is. You know, we're halfway through our careers, and then all of a sudden we've got a black man going into the White House. Our kids have that as an example. Nobody is telling them what teachers told me when I said, you know, one day I'd like to be president of the United States. Well, you know, Ray, you need to find something a little more realistic. You know, where a white kid next to me could say the same exact thing, and they're like, Tommy, you could do anything you set your mind to. But Tommy wasn't half the student that I was. You know,
and they just
so
did it. They didn't even think about it. They just
just out of the blue. I mean, for them, it was like, yep, you can do it. For me, it was like, you need to come up with something a little more realistic. You know, where our kids now have that example. You know, it's I'm proud of that. And like Byron said, there's folks just don't believe that we could sit down and tell them stories on top of stories about how we were profiled or what have you. I just one story real quick. Being in Belleville, Illinois, I got pulled over. But they 60 Minutes ran a special on it about how there was no black cops in the Belleville Police Department. I'm like, yeah, tell me something I don't already know. I got pulled over for being black, and it wasn't even me that they were pulling over. They pulled over my buddy that was with me and said he fit the description. Well, how in the hell did you see that he fits the description when we're 250 feet, 350 feet away from you? And we're going past you at 25, 30 miles an hour. You had enough time to see through tinted windows that he fit the description? Are you kidding me? You know, so but I tell that story to somebody that doesn't look like us, and they're like, You're exaggerating. Did that really happen? I just can't believe that the police would do that to you. Well, yeah, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. But I'm gonna stop rambling, man.
That's crazy. I got pulled over at gunpoint in Shiloh, man. I was in uniform. My man told me a truck like mine had got stolen. Everything matched. My name tape, my ID, the registration, the insurance. My man had the gun out. I am a senior master sergeant in the Air Force, fully in uniform. My man got the gun out. I'm like, this is a little military town. What's going on, man? Agitated. And I'm just like, you push that stuff to the side, but like, oh, this is where we live, man. It's real out here,
Yeah. I got pulled over once in New York. Me and my bro driving down to New York, and he says, "Hey, that car up there, that car's gonna come pull in behind you." I said, "Okay." Sure enough, my car pulls in behind me. He said, "Now 5 miles down the road, there's another car gonna pull you over." Sure enough, about 5 miles down the road, lights came on, car pulled me in front of me, and what he asked for, because I was driving a BMW, tinted windows. Can I see your registration? So my boy on the other side said, "What's the problem, officer?" He says, "I'm not talking to you." He says, "License and registration." So I said, "What's going on? What happened?" He said, "I just need your information." So my boy pulls out his badge, who's also a state trooper. "Oh, it's nothing wrong. I didn't know you was on the job. We out." So, so just and that's the only saving grace for me that day was I just happened to have a brother who was a state trooper in the car with me. And he knew how they was profiling people. And he said, "You were just getting pulled over, not because you were speeding, just because of the profile." And that's how, being in the DMV, we don't have it as much, but I got people still in Indiana and Ohio and Michigan. They still get pulled over for profiling, man. And people don't think that it's real, but it happens every day.
Man, what's that town in it's between Terre Haute and but they always say don't stop there. Like, don't stop there. It's like
a whole bunch of them in Indiana.
It's off
Greenwood.
No, it's off the highway though. It's what's that main highway to go if you driving through, like going to Indianapolis? 70. It's on 70.
It's on 70.
It's off of 70. So I think it's right after Terra. A buddy of mine that went to Indiana University, he was like, and I thought about it because a couple of years back, I drove down to Illinois and I drove by and I was like, man, they was like, yeah, don't stop here for nothing. Nothing at all.
Well, what I would like to say too, because I'm knowing that there's going to be some brothers watching, one thing that we have always talked about is how some of our folks like to have this hard display. When you get pulled over, again, it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. I've gotten pulled over as a 50-year-old man, and I had my hands on the steering wheel, and I wasn't doing anything wrong. 25, I was doing 30 and a 25. 30 and a 25 in my hometown. I had my hands on the steering wheel, and the cop walked up. He said, "Oh, you don't have to do that." I'm like, "The hell I don't," because my job is to get home alive. I've got kids. They were adults at that point, but I've got a whole wife at home. I need to get back home to. I want to be a grandparent one day. I want to see my grandkids born. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to comply. And that's one thing I would tell folks. You know what? Don't be pulling this. And I know we've said this in previous seasons. Don't pull this. Well, I know my rights, or trying to be a TV lawyer. If they want your license and registration, give it to them. If they give you a ticket, take it and be thankful and go. The key is to leave that stop alive. So that's the only thing I would like to say to anybody that might be watching this. I don't care what your age is. If you get pulled over, we always get killed for not being non-compliant. I don't care how wrong it is, comply and get out of there and get home alive. That's it, bottom line. So go ahead, folks. Go ahead, fellas.
It looked like y'all said most of it. I'd just like to, my final comment would be that, when you examine, the progress that's been made, knowing that generations before us had it in a way where, we couldn't do anything but benefit from that, and I remain appreciative of those sacrifices, and hope that, that our generation, is willing to make similar, not the same sacrifices, but similar sacrifices for things that the generations after us may benefit from. But when I think about it biblically and how they say how more difficult it is for people that have a lot to enter into the gates and those who may not have, when you think about it, our generation, has experienced a certain level of what society might consider success, even though success is up to each individual, to determine. But, society might look at it and say, oh, you should be grateful. You've had a great life. Look at you. You're able to own a house and more than one car. What more do you want? And so I think they sold that ideal of, the American dream or what success should look like for you. And a lot of people bought into it, not realizing that, they're going to let you have a certain amount of what people would call success. And that's why, people get so irate whenever they see a professional athlete take a stand on getting paid his value. They're like, you're already making $20 million a year. What in the world are you complaining about? And so you can always point to the fact that, whatever you think I'm making, I've earned. They're not even paying me my full value. So we can't even have that conversation. Plus, is anyone asking the owners, the billionaire owners, what they're making? Because if they're paying me 20 and they're paying my teammate 30 and my other teammate 40 or 50, what do you think they're making? They're not in this to lose money, So I think those conversations, cloud what the real issues are typically. And so I would just say that, as we, have already highlighted the fact that, Black Americans are known throughout the world for being consumers, and drawn towards that, the labels and all the other things, which, a label or no label at all, it covers your back, cover your feet, it's all good, right? But we get caught up in that. And so instead of investing in, generational wealth, or maybe to make things better for those coming after us, we try to and typically bend towards societal norms. And I would just hope that, what we're witnessing would give us an opportunity to just stop and take a closer look at what we really value, and what we're spending our time, in particular, with our other resources on supporting, and then just start making decisions that's best for you and yours. Because a lot of those other things you're not going to be able to change. Right? Because the one thing we didn't get into is media's role in all of what's being communicated and disseminated, right? You know, and so I think about those things, and you know, and so when you see things happen to people like Joy Reid and others that have you know, lost a platform that someone else controlled. And Roland Martin talked about this as well, saying that someone didn't like some commentary that he gave, and they asked him, well, who do I need to talk to get him to stop? And they're like, yeah, you can't talk to anybody. I own all of this. I own my voice. I own my platform. And I'm going to continue to tell the truth. So, yeah, you can't go to anyone, you know. And so we need to think about it from that perspective. You know, does someone else get to control our voice in the position that we take, or do we do that? Right. And of course, we should always have our own original thoughts, ideas, and suggestions. As a wise man, Mr. Beatty is known to say, and he's absolutely right. You know, if you don't have your own original thoughts, you know, then you're just gonna take up someone else's. And so with that, man, I appreciate you all. I do, you know, and just piggybacking on what John said, I like the fact that, you know, we do all have our own opinions about, you know, plethora of topics. But we all, I think, stand together in that, you know, someone has to look out for those that are less fortunate. You know, and I'm a staunch proponent, you know, supporter of, you know, what are we doing to take care of the elderly? You know, they've given it what they had to this country, you know, and in return, you know, thought that they would at least be supported, you know. And so are we supporting them, you know, or are we just trying to enrich ourselves? So with that, I hope that everyone, you know, continues to think about that as they move forward, and, you know, be appalled, but find out, you know, how you can, you know, let your voice be heard, and let your activity make a difference, because they're going to be who they're going to be. That's already proven, you know. So from the burning down of Black Wall Street because they didn't like something, you know, they didn't have to prove it. They just had to say that it happened. And look at what happened, you know, afterwards, without anyone being held responsible, pretty much. So anyway, I appreciate you all letting me participate in this conversation.
Man, that was such a perfect segue. I should be saying, does anybody else have anything to say? But the segue was so perfect for our closing quote. So I just think sometimes you should just let perfection be. And Brother Rob brought us perfection as we segue into our closing quote. And it comes from the recently passed, but always remembered Nikki Giovanni. And she says, there's always something to do. There are hungry people to feed, naked people to clothe, sick people to comfort, and to make well. While I don't expect you to save the world, I do think it's not asking for much for you to love those with whom you sleep, share the happiness of those whom you call friend, engage those among whom you are visionary, and remove from your life those who offer you depression, despair, and disrespect. And that's Nikki Giovanni. And with that, we're out.